The month of September is chock full of games, and not just a bunch of games. A lot of them look excellent. We're getting... It's just there's so many good games, good looking games. So once again, our wallets will be sad, but our Switch libraries will be extremely happy. I'm Zian from Nintendo Life, and today we're going to be taking a look at what we think are going to be some of the best games to release on the Nintendo Switch in the month of September. Now, these games are going to be in order of release and by alphabet. I think that's how I did it. We'll find out. The first game on our list is a big one for Switch owners, as the original PlayStation mascot Spyro is making his first mainline appearance on the system on September 3rd with the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. This collection has taken the original 3 games from the PlayStation 1 and beefed them up with today's graphics, and boy, do they look good! Now, Spyro has made a few appearances on previous Nintendo platforms, but none of them really stood up to the quality of the originals, and the ability to play these new ones on the go and all polished up is definitely something to be excited about. But be aware, if you are planning to pick this game up physically, there is a required 10GB download just to play the game. And then on that same day, another PlayStation classic joins the Nintendo Switch library with Final Fantasy VIII. It's sort of the middle child of the Final Fantasy series. You either love it for its seriousness and at the same time weirdness, or really just feel the opposite. And while this classic RPG may not have gotten the same coat of paint Spyro has, it surprisingly still looks a lot better than I was expecting it to. I played this game growing up, but unfortunately never finished it, as one of my family members decided it'd be a good idea to turn off the system while I was playing, and I'm pretty sure I was nearing the end of Disc 1, and unfortunately I never went back to it. But now that the game has some new features that allow you to speed up the battles, or even just remove the random battles entirely, I might give this one another shot. And if you've yet to jump into this one either, maybe now's a good time to as well. The streets are about to be wiped clean on September 5th as the River City girls are rushing into town. The 2 main characters, Kyoko and Misako's boyfriends, have been kidnapped, and it's up to them to find the perpetrator and get them back. This spin-off of the famous Street Beater series, River City Ransom, brings a new cast of characters, a brand new art style evocative of the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World video game, and the same co-op brawling gameplay you expect from the series. But this time, it's being developed by the creators of the Shantae series, Way Forward. Now, the digital version of River City Girls does launch on September 5th, but the team over at Limited Run Games is also releasing a physical copy sometime in the month of September or October for the Nintendo Switch. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed, because if this sells well enough, maybe, just maybe, it'll give them enough to convince Universal to allow them to re-release the Scott Pilgrim video game. Please, please make it happen, Limited Run. If anyone's gonna do it, it's gonna be you guys. And then on the following day comes an interesting title called Creature in the Well, a dungeon crawling hack and slash with a twist. Pinballs. Your journey takes you into the heart of a mountain to bring back power to your civilization, but the creature lurking below won't make it easy for you. The creature has set a number of traps for you to overcome, and the only way to solve them is by smacking these little electric orbs around the room with your sword, hitting bumpers and switches to give it that pinball feel. I had a chance to play this briefly at E3 and walked away with a lot of excitement for its release. The puzzles can offer quite a bit of challenge, but if you think you're up to it, by all means, take up the sword and dive into the dungeon. Also on the 6th of September, we're getting NBA 2K20 on Nintendo Switch. Now, I'm not really the guy you should ask about sports games, but the previous NBA 2K titles on Switch scored pretty high over here at Nintendo Life, getting 8s and 9s. Now, as far as some new features go about this new game, I couldn't really find a whole lot of information. And specifically, I wasn't sure if some of these new features are even going to be in the Switch version, since it's probably going to be pretty different than the other console versions out there. But one thing I did find is that this is the first time the series has ever had the WNBA playable in the game. Now that's a pretty huge deal. I understand that much. And then go ahead and jump to the next week and you'll find DAEMON X Machina, a new mech action game from one of the producers of the Armored Core series. You play as a mercenary equipped with a mech known as an arsenal and are tasked with protecting the post-apocalyptic world from any other oncoming dangers that may threaten it. Not only are you able to customize your avatar and your arsenal in your base of operations, but similarly to Breath of the Wild, you're able to pick up and fight with any of the enemy's weapons after you defeat them in combat, giving you an almost endless amount of customization options. Now, Daemon X Machina did also receive a demo mid last year that was met with mixed reception, but the developers have listened to the feedback and have adjusted the game accordingly. So we're looking forward to seeing how this one turns out. Especially with how good Astral Chain was, Nintendo's just hitting them out of the park lately. And then a handful of days later, on September 17th, the classic co-op beat-em-up Castle Crashers is busting its way onto Nintendo Switch. Which its release date was just recently announced at PAX, and so boy was I really happy I hadn't exported this video yet. Castle Crashers mixes the arcade action-style combat we grew up with in the 90s with an RPG-level progression system that allows you to tailor your knight to your playstyle throughout the game. It features a full co-op campaign that can be played on or offline, 60 FPS gameplay, and all of the DLC that was ever released. So go on, wrestle up some friends, and get to crashing those castles. And then following on that same day is AI The SOMNIUM Files, a point-and-click adventure game in which you play a detective on the trail of a serial killer. You'll talk with witnesses and search the streets of Tokyo for clues. However, the real world isn't the only place to look, as you're able to dive into the dreams of witnesses and suspects to learn more. Now, what really intrigued me about this game, though, is the development team, which is headed by the director of the Zero Escape series. I only played 999 on the original DS, but it always kept me on the edge of my seat. And with the branching story paths and different options, AI is looking to make me feel the same way. Now, the 20th of September marks a big day for Switch releases, starting out with the re-release of Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch, a classic turn-based RPG from Level 5, the team behind the Professor Layton and the Yokai Watch series. It features a wonderfully heartfelt story, which we'll just spare you the details of and let you find out for yourself. It also features a remarkable soundtrack and breathtakingly animated cutscenes from Studio Ghibli that give that extra ounce of charm that only they can provide. If you've yet to dive into this one, or just simply put it down and never picked it back up, much like myself, you'll soon be able to play this whenever and wherever, as long as you have some spare time and your Switch. Ah, yes, finally! Untitled Goose Game. The game with the working title that everyone fell in love with, which is still keeping its working title, is finally coming to the Switch on September 20th. Untitled Goose Game is a game about running around town and messing with people in the silliest of ways. But as a goose. We're not really sure who writes it, but it appears that within each level you'll get a to-do list that's filled with many ways to mess with humans or just have fun. This is definitely a game for fans of things like Goat Simulator or Katamari Damacy, or really any other wacky games that fall in between. And then topping off September 20th is The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening for Nintendo Switch. For anyone unaware or new to the franchise, this is actually a remake of the classic Game Boy title. And as you should be able to see, this title is nothing like Breath of the Wild. It's a top-down adventure with dungeons that are full of weapons and tools to collect, and loads of boss battles. The island, too, is full of mystery, and its inhabitants are mostly quite the strange bunch, similar to the likes of Majora's Mask. As I've previously stated many times in the past, I've wanted some sort of remake of this game for an extremely long time, as it was my first Zelda and one of my favorites, so I'm through the roof that I'll be able to experience the game in a whole new light very soon. And if you've yet to ever play a classic Zelda title, this is the perfect time to get your feet wet with the series. And then following up Link's Awakening on the 24th is Contra Rogue Corp. You know, after first watching the trailer, I rewatched it a couple times since E3. I thought that this game would have been fine. It's Contra. Sure, it looks weird. It doesn't look the greatest, but it's a Contra title, and I bet it's gonna be fine. I rewatched the trailer and this game looks like absolute butt on the Switch. Yes, I have put a Bubsy game on the list before, but that was made by a well-known developer who's done good work before. This game has an identity crisis. It doesn't know what it wants to be. It's trying to be a mix of the PlayStation 2 Contra games and the old school ones, and it just looks gross, and there's a panda bear that is just a panda that wields weapons, but apparently it's an android with a human brain. Like, that doesn't make... I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't do it. I mean, the game could be fun. Up next on the 24th is the hide-and-seek survival game Dead by Daylight. Similarly to Friday the 13th, you get the chance to play with a team of 4 survivors trying to escape the clutches of whichever murderous killer is hunting you down. And sometimes you'll actually get the chance to play as the killer yourself. This game has been out for a few years now on other platforms and sort of went through a rough patch with bugs, but a lot has been cleared up since its initial release, so we're hoping this Switch port is successful. This game is also ripe with DLC, featuring tons of characters from famous movies and TV shows. And one of the most recently released DLC packs is for Stranger Things, which I'm very excited to check out, as long as the Switch version holds its own. And then on the 27th of September, the award-winning platformer Ori and the Blind Forest Definitive Edition leaps on a Nintendo Switch. And for a lot of people, Ori was one of the reasons to own an Xbox One over other current-gen consoles. So we're all super surprised to see this Xbox exclusive hit a Nintendo console. And I know there were tons of rumors about it coming out, especially with Cuphead on the Xbox, but just what a time to be alive. And not only does its amazing hand-painted art style transfer well to the Switch, it runs super smooth, running at an impressive 60 frames per second. Now, this month's list doesn't really have much for platformers, but it does have Ori, which could be one of the best platformers ever made. And then finally finishing off our list for September and launching on the 27th is the massive RPG Dragon Quest XI S Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. Now, Dragon Quest XI was released originally on the PlayStation 4 and also had a slightly different version on 3DS in Japan, which the West unfortunately never saw. But this new version for Switch is not only bringing over the full PlayStation 4 version, but is also packing in some extra features, one of which is the ability to switch over to a 16-bit graphical art style at certain points in the game. This definitive edition of the game also packs in a ton of new missions and includes the full original orchestral score, unlike the PlayStation 4 version, which features a MIDI soundtrack. And thanks to the channel Stop Skeletons from Fighting, I now understand how bad MIDI horns are in that game. And if you haven't seen their video discussing the whole MIDI situation with Dragon Quest XI on PS4, go check that out. It's definitely worth a watch. And now I know it feels like Fire Emblem just launched yesterday, but if you need a little more convincing on this one, you can check out the demo that's available right now in the eShop, which takes over 10 hours to complete. Like, who decided that? And there you have it, some of the games that we think are going to end up being the best on the Nintendo Switch in the month of September. Now, of course, we couldn't fit everything on our list, but that's where you come in. Feel free to let us know in the comments below which games you're most excited to play from the month of September. And if you enjoyed this video, why don't you go ahead and awaken that like button, subscribe to Nintendo Life, and ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we release new videos. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Zian from Nintendo Life, and we'll see you next time.